Greetings, everyone. This is Caroline Staten with Transition US, and thank you for joining our teleseminar today on Transition Streets, Stories from the Field. And we'll be hearing today from a number of the people, the transition leaders and community leaders across the country who participated in the Transition Streets pilot. And we'll be hearing from them. We'll be doing a few rounds with them. We'll be hearing some of the highlights and also some tips that they have or suggestions for what others might do in their communities to roll out transition streets in their locales. And then we'll have some time for Q&A as well. And before that, I'd like to just welcome all of you and introduce you to the platform that we're using. It's an audio platform, and I can see a number of you still coming in the room. And we'll be asking that if you have any questions or comments, we'll be asking you to press 1 on your phone keypad so that you can participate in that way. And I wanted just to provide a few bits of updated information that we have on Transition Streets. For those of you that don't know, Transition Streets is a tried and tested project where neighbors come together with neighbors to implement simple, no-cost and low-cost actions. And these actions cut household energy use, it reduces waste and water use, and changes how we eat and transport ourselves, and strengthens our neighborhoods at the same time. In fact, that's one of the great benefits of the project, is the strengthening of our neighborhoods and using transition streets as a mechanism for really getting to know our neighbors and building those relationships that can really act as a strong support in any time of emergency, for example. And also Transition Streets has the potential to really reduce household energy bills and also to just really take a big reduction out of our household carbon footprint as well. So those are some of the things that Transition Streets is able to do. And it began in the UK with over 500 households that have participated in the project already. And we've seen great benefits from those participating households, and we're really looking forward to how Transition Streets will also benefit all of us across the U.S. as well. And let me see what else I wanted to mention right now. Well, Transition Streets, it's a curriculum, really. It's a handbook, and it has 7 sections and guides the participants through those 7 sections, suggesting actions that they can take in these various areas. So the 7 sections are, there's the getting together, the getting started chapter, and then there's energy, water, food, waste, and transportation. And all of those are loaded with a lot of tips and actions that people can take. And when people are going through this curriculum together, they're learning from each other as well and supporting each other in taking those actions. And then a final chapter is more the celebratory action, the celebratory chapter, we did this together. What are we going to do next? So that's Transition Streets in a nutshell. And before we get to our participants, I just wanted to mention a few other things. So we are building a new website. It's transitionstreets.org, and that will be up and running next Friday. And also on that website, there'll be the updated curriculum. The people that participated in the pilot also provided a lot of great feedback that we've been incorporating so that this next phase will be even better than the first one. And Transition Streets will be free to transition initiatives, and we are asking for a $20 donation for those that are transition initiatives, just to help with this work and support it. And we'll be also listening for more feedback and good ideas to roll into future versions. Another thing I just wanted to talk about is the evaluation.
Hello?
There's an evaluation component, and that helps to give us a sense of how Transition Streets is doing. So we'll be asking participants to do that as well. And I think that's all I'm going to say for now. I have a few more things to add at the end. But what I'd like to do now is begin with our wonderful our pilot leaders here that are on the call with us today. We have Chris Thompson from Bozeman, Montana, Claudia Brown from Missoula, Montana, Linda Curry from Berkeley, California, Jamie Edmonds from San Diego, California, and Larry Goldberg from Humboldt County, also in California. And Elise was with us briefly here, and we hope that she'll come back on the line. And she's from Colorado, Manatee Springs, Colorado. So Chris, I'd like to start with you. And I'd like you just in a few minutes, maybe approximately 4 minutes or so, if you can, to give us some highlights of your experience, your and your group's experience using Transition Streets. So go ahead, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm here with my lovely wife, Nevada Thompson, and as you mentioned, we're in Bozeman, Montana. This running Transition Streets here in our community, it took off very, very well instantly. We tied in with a few nonprofits here in our community. Started consulting with Transition Labs down in Colorado. We also partnered up with the Yellowstone Teton Clean Energy Coalition out of Jackson, Wyoming. And one result of that partnership is we implemented the use of biodiesel, the waste from the local restaurants, to power our public transportation. That was the result of the transportation chapter. One of our Transition Streets members saved $450 in 1 month at her business on her energy bill, just monitoring her energy use, and it didn't tie up with what she was finding, so she confronted the company and saved almost $500 in a month. That's impressive. We've also tied in, interestingly, the city of Bozeman is a very progressive thinking community, and 2 years ago they implemented a sustainability department with the city of Bozeman. So we've also been working closely with them and expanding this throughout our community. Another great thing that we found was a company called Arcadia Power. That if you aren't off grid and you can't access alternative energy, anywhere in the U.S. can utilize Arcadia Power and use your money to essentially vote for alternative energy. So that's very exciting. And this Tuesday we'll even be presenting a Tesla Model S electric car to the student body of a local private Christian school. So that's kind of the majority of the highlights that we have found. And if anyone has any questions, wants me to elaborate on that, I'm more than happy.
Yeah, we'll take some Q&A at the end of these rounds, but thank you, Chris. And Claudia, you're also in Montana and had a group going with Transition Streets. So let us know some highlights from your experience.
Yes, thank you. Glad to be on this. I'm excited about Transition Streets. We had a group that included our 3 steering committee members also included an artist and a young 22-year-old, and then some others who also were very interested in household conservation. So one of the main things that we felt really good about was the sense of camaraderie and enjoyment and the sense of accomplishment that we felt doing this project. Seeing each other's homes, we had our meetings in each other's homes, and then also seeing each other's conservation practices. And then also it was really helpful to study and share each other's energy bills and getting educated on some technical aspects of energy and water usage. For instance, how to read meters and using electricity monitors. And we had 2 electricity monitors put in the public library for anyone to check out. And let's see, I learned more about the chemistry of soil, and I personally accomplished a more involved project making a hugel culture in my backyard. And also getting more involved with the City Zero Waste Group, and also the Missoula Climate Change Summit. I'm collaborating with one of the staff people there. And we've seen how it's possible to live in the city and work toward getting off the grid, and also sharing online and local resources.
Wow, thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure all of you can say a lot more. So maybe just a suggestion, we'll be able to do some more filling in at the end in the Q&A question. So I guess just main highlights for now. Let's see how we do. Linda Curry from Berkeley, go ahead, please.
Yeah, hello everybody. Like Carolyn said, I live in Berkeley, California. Part of the East Bay, across from San Francisco, and excuse me, I have a little frog. We had 11 of us in our neighborhood do this program, and what was really great was that we were all like really in close proximity to each other. I've done some of this work before with a program called the Low Carbon Diet, where people were more spread out, and you're not going to borrow a cup of sugar from someone who lives across town. So that was super exciting. My husband and I and family have lived here for 8 years, and you sort of see people in passing. We all work except for 2 people in our group. And so you see people in passing, you say hello, and you get to that point where you don't go much further. And there were actually people in our group that had never met, never really talked to each other. So that was definitely a really big highlight. Other highlights were in going through the curriculum, we started each session with an icebreaker. And so the curriculum was, it was a great starting point, but I felt like, the facts are one thing, but talking and having real conversations with people is where change can happen and where you can inspire each other. I think we all are pretty inundated with a lot of facts and a lot of knowledge on things that we could do, but without actually taking the time to do them, we don't. We're busy. We're going about our everyday lives. So that part, just taking that time, talking about these issues and looking at each other. One thing that we did as part of this was we actually looked at each other as being assets, and found that in the looking at gardening and trying to save water, that we have people in our group that know about irrigation. There are people that are experts in growing veggies, people that were experts in drought-tolerant and native plants. We had a couple people that knew about bike repair, one person who's a solar installer, all kinds of things like that. We found out that, we have a lot of us have tools that just sit, that we use them a couple times a year, and that in doing these projects to make these changes, we could borrow them from each other rather than buying new. Other things like paints, cooking equipment. So we sort of made a list that way, which was really helpful, and we learned that we could lean on each other for this kind of support. The other thing we did, we sort of mapped our neighborhood as part of this, and we discovered, we looked at our neighborhood in a different way of all the resources we have locally, so that we don't have to necessarily get on an airplane, or leave the neighborhood to find our enjoyment. We could have more block parties. We could do things more locally. That was a fun thing to do as well. And then the last thing that kind of came out of this was we created a vision for our neighborhood on how could we improve? What are things that we'd like to see? And we came up with lots of things like more trees, less cars, more block parties. So we found that this curriculum was a great way to measure, and once we started measuring and looking, we could take actions in all of these areas. But there's just so much more beyond it that we can do, and that others, I think, will be inspired by. I think our next action is going to be meeting to plan emergency preparedness things. So I'll stop there and let the next person go. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Linda, so much. Jamie Edmonds from San Diego County. Go ahead.
Hi, Caroline. Hi, everyone. I was one of the only pilot groups, I think, that was not already an existing transition initiative. So I kind of got in right as the door to the pilot came down, and kind of within a week or two, by posting up on nextdoor.com, which is pretty well saturated in my area, the city of San Diego, got about 10 people that were interested, and of those, there were 7 of us that actually went through the pilot. Had a great experience, had a wonderful time meeting some neighbors that all lived within a mile or two of me, so I can appreciate the convenience of that. I had flyered the people in my immediate block, and nobody responded. It was actually rainy and windy that day, so they might not have seen it, and the thing might have gotten wet, I don't know. But had a great group of people with a very diverse background and skill set, as someone else had mentioned. I've been doing kind of this sort of thing for most of my life, kind of being a transition initiative of one household. And I still was amazed at all the cool stuff that I learned going through the Transition Streets project. And that there was even more stuff that I could actually bring to it that that wasn't in the book even, which it's addicting once you get into all of this stuff. Being able to share it with like-minded individuals makes it so much more powerful and fun, because it was one of the things that drew me was the ability to build community. And I've just been putting myself out there. I recently retired, so I've got full time to do this. I still am figuring out what form it's going to take, but I just started going to city council meetings and county supervisors meetings and just taking advantage of that 2 to 3 minute open public comment period. And then my phone starts ringing, and people that saw the presentation, or politicians, people whose campaigns I've supported and are kind of proactive, are referring media people. So I've had the local public radio and public television people over to the house, and they've shot some stuff of some of the things that I've done, interviewed one of our pilot group meetings. And my pilot group, I don't think, knew what they were signing on for. They're all going to be television personalities now, but they're all really excited about it, and they're looking to take the next step and form an actual transition initiative. Maybe start with just my immediate neighborhood or the college area that's near San Diego State University. So I've got that resource there. Also partnering up with San Diego 350.org, which is very active and has a huge database of active people. Also, a lot of the cities in San Diego County and most in the state of California have or will have to have very soon a climate action plan. And it's one of those things that politicians like to do because it looks good and they can do a press conference, but it really has no way of implementing any of it. Well, the Transition Streets program is that way. You know, you want everybody to use less water, especially here in California. You want everybody to use less power. You want everybody to, you know, not drive so much and all this other stuff. But how do you get the message to them, you know, with your 30-second soundbite on the news or a press release that everybody's like, whatever. I found it very easy to talk to people about, and have had way more fun than I thought I would have had doing this because everybody sees the value, everybody sees the importance. Here in Southern California, obviously everybody's focusing on the water right now, but it starts the conversation. It opens the door to the rest of the whole transition conversation, and eventually to the one about the root cause of all of this, you know, our consumer money-driven economy, which is my end goal, but learning how to walk first and really having a good time. I can't thank the folks at Transition US enough for all the work and slaving away behind the scenes and all of the organizational stuff, because I can kind of just walk in and take advantage of all of this, and it's really wonderful. So my heartfelt thanks to everybody that's out there, the other transition initiatives as well that I'm learning a lot from. Somebody posted a list of environmental movies on Internet Movie Database. It's from some other initiative, a transition initiative somewhere, like 170 environmental films. And that was one of the things I wanted to do, is create a movie night for my neighbors and just start showing the short films and doing a discussion afterwards. You know, like Hopkins says, don't just show them the end of suburbia and then, you know, let them go away without a shoulder to cry on or some action that they can take to make change. So all kinds of interesting plans going on in San Diego right now. Almost too much to distill down.
Thank you. We'll be hearing more on the next round too, Jamie. More tips of along the lines that seems like you're heading into. So just hold on that, and let's get to. And thank you so much. I know you're so passionate about it. I really appreciate all the great work and getting the word out and everything. So. But we'll hear a little more about some of those outreach tactics and strategies and next steps in another round. So let's hear from Larry Larry Goldberg in Humboldt County. Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you, Caroline. First of all, I need to explain to people, I don't know where you're all living, but most people think of California as like San Francisco and Los Angeles, and San Diego maybe, but we are in the far northern part of rural California. Humboldt County is 6 hours north of San Francisco, and we're only 7 hours south of Portland. So we're up in the Redwoods in a fairly rural area. And when I talk about a rural area, our area is about the size of Delaware, but we have a total population of about 120,000 people. So we are very rural and very spread out. So we have a little different concerns sometimes in some of the urban areas. Our initial group was about 10 members of our transition initiative. We have a transition group here called Transition Humboldt. We're about 2.5 years old. We have about 300 members at this time, and we meet regularly and put on a lot of events. So we had about 10 of our members decide to do the pilot, and we did the pilot in January and early February, and we literally did it 1 week at a time. So we went through the entire manual over 7 weeks, and our members are from different towns, so that we were able to try out the curriculum, and then we are going to be launching 4 different actual rollouts starting soon, starting this spring. We found that the best way for us to start the discussion, and I know in my neighborhood, we're going to be looking at emergency preparedness. One of our issues up here is earthquakes, of course. People are worried about drought. Drought is not as bad here as it is in much of the state, but drought is still a big issue. So that we like to kind of enter the discussion saying get prepared for emergencies, and the Transition Streets program is a way to look at your whole lifestyle and figure out what you can do to be more self-reliant, and in that process be prepared for whatever emergency may come. So it's a win-win proposition. You can save money, you can have a very good lifestyle, and you can be ready for whatever emergencies may come. So from our group, we did, for example, energy audits. A number of our members took advantage of some local programs to convert their entire homes to LED lighting. I know I did my house, a couple of other people did theirs, and we got immediate savings. So some of us got $500 to $800 worth of light bulbs for free, and that was a really great thing. We'd like to promote that fact. We have been developing local resources through every chapter. So as we talk about waste, for example, we have several groups that are involved with recycling and what's called upcycling, taking what would otherwise be waste products and converting them into useful products. So we want to promote these other groups in our area. So that was a benefit to come out of our event. We are also organizing workshops that came out of the training to do rainwater collection, zero-scape landscaping, drought-tolerant planting, and all that type of thing. And we want to start sharing these skills between neighborhoods. So where I live in the county, we have a number of experts in various landscaping techniques and permaculture and that type of thing. And we're meeting with groups in Eureka and in Southern Humboldt that have other expertise, and we're sharing that expertise. So we have a big event that we're going to be putting on in October. It's going to be an intercultural skill share where we are now networking with our local tribes. We, in this part of the state, have 6 major tribal groups, Native American tribal groups, so we are now trying to make inroads with the tribal communities. And so this is an area with the Transition Streets program to create some interface where we can have some things to talk about in common and share some skills. So we're trying to use some of the indigenous skills combined with permaculture skills, combined with Transition Streets, for us all to be sharing and learning from each other about many simple techniques to live better, be more self-reliant, and save money at the same time. Well, finally, I like what I heard earlier about nextdoor.com. We have our own Google group and a website and a Facebook page, and we do a lot of social networking of our group. But we are now using Nextdoor as an organizing technique to try to get the word out about Transition Streets. And so we're going to try to expand into the general neighborhoods and reach more people to really talk about drought, which is a major topic, about energy, which is a major topic, about waste, and about food. Food is a big concern to everybody. We want to see everyone try to grow their own gardens and do a lot more buying local. So all of this ties in with the Transition Streets program, and I too want to thank all the folks at Transition US, Marissa and Caroline and Maggie, who worked on this project, and I think it's going to be a great thing, and we are looking forward to contributing to its success.
Wow, thank you. Thanks so much, all of you. And I wanted to check, and I think we will take a few questions or comments in a minute before going into our next round. But I wanted to see if, Elise, if you have made it back on the call. And if
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, perfect. Great. Thank you. So this is Elise Rothman from Manitou Springs, Colorado. And yes, just if you could give us some just a brief overview of some of the highlights from your group as well.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Well, following after Larry is going to be quite a challenge. Just a quick background, Manitou Springs has been involved in the transition movement for, 5 or 6 years, but never really let's say, did anything with it other than movies at the library. So this was a really big step for us to actually do something concrete. And I think that that's one of the very important highlights was just that we actually did something concrete. In general, so we had eight households involved. Most everyone involved in the group were already had some pretty good notions of the transition movement, so we didn't have any real newbies in the group. And I would say that the highlight of it was this newfound sense of community that occurred. I mean, really, there's no sense of community in this town, or very, very little. And we didn't change all our light bulbs or do anything super, super significant, but we are now permanently connected to each other. And we are meeting every 2 weeks and working on projects together. And so I would say that was the biggest highlight. And the other thing was that, so I'm the only one in the group who is car free, and we're going to start arranging. The people who do have bikes, they just don't know really how to get around by bike, because we have to sort of bus, and it's fairly complicated, and the trails are not well indicated. So we're planning on going out as a group and biking. So those I would say really are the highlights.
Great, thank you so much, Elise. I know you had trouble getting on the phone. I'm glad you're here with us. And wanted just to, I see that there are some other people from some of the other groups on the call. And if you did want to chime in briefly with a highlight, if you could press 1 on your keypad, and then I'll call on you if you had another highlight to bring to the fore. So just press 1 on your keypad, and let me see here. Logan, please go ahead and let us know, Logan, where you're located as well.
Okay, I'm from the Charlottesville, Virginia pilot program, and I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that other people said, but the biggest highlight for us was definitely the sense of community. And we kind of knew each other before, but after doing these 7 sessions together, we're doing things together so much more. Another highlight is that we did decide to meet kind of on a monthly basis and opening it up to the total neighborhood and having special events or workshops and all sorts of things. We have 2 picnics planned already. The other things that came out of it was a tool share and skill sharing, really. We kind of took, through the 7 sessions, learned about the skills of each other and are definitely sharing those things now. Also, a few more people from the group joined the Charlottesville Time Bank, and we're actively exchanging through that. And then connecting through Nextdoor. That's been valuable for the whole neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods. So that Nextdoor, that connecting neighborhoods has been really, really great. So those were the only additional things that I wanted to say.
Great, thank you. Glad you're with us. And I just wanted to just pause for a minute. We're going to do another round. I know potentially that some of the people on the call are still a little confused. What is it or something? So you might want to ask a clarifying question about transition streets. But just take a few questions right now before going into our next round. Our next round we're going to hear from the same people again, and they're going to give us some tips and suggestions, if more than what they've already said, about how to get people engaged or just overcoming sort of that first step of, where do I start? So we'll hear some tips and suggestions from people. And so if you have a question, though, now asking participants here, if just press 1 on your keypad, and I can call on you, and if not, we'll go into the next round. Ed Clay, please go ahead.
Hi, Carolyn. I'm with Transition
Hi.
Sonoma Valley, Sonoma Valley, California. It sounds to me like, and the people who were in the pilots could respond to this if they have a response to my question, and that is, it sounds to me like most people gathered what I would call early adopters for their pilot program, and I'm curious if anyone actually worked sort of on their block and with people they may know as neighbors, but don't know as early adopters, and what kind of success or lack of they had in that way.
Great. Let's hear. We've got Larry. Go ahead.
First of all, in our group, in our pilot, we actually had put the word out to some of the communities that we're going to be doing this, and we had at least a couple of people in our group who were complete novices to transition and liked the idea, just wanted to hear more about it, and they joined us for this discussion, and they've become passionate believers now in transition. They really love the idea of transition. So it was a great way to introduce the whole concept of transition. I am in a neighborhood that knows nothing about the transition movement, but we have an existing neighborhood group that's been meeting for 35 years. We have just basically a homeowners association, and so I've broached the subject of transition to this group, and I'll be introducing the Transition Streets program this summer to those from my group who want to participate, and I have several people interested in doing it, so I'm expecting that it will take pretty well. In our case, I think that the best road in is around the emergency preparedness angle, because in our area, that's something that gets everyone's attention, and it's something we all want to work on. But that's my story, and I don't know how it is for others. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I'll just see if there are any other of the presenters. We'll take one more from the presenters. Elise, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I wanted to sort of add to what Larry was saying. I said that we didn't have any newbies, or early adopters, but that's actually not true. We did have one, and she is now kind of becoming a cornerstone. This new person who had never heard of the transition movement, really knew very little about sustainability, is now like one of the head honchos of the group. So I just wanted to add that. Very important.
Great, thank you. And I see, Linda, you put your hand up too, so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that was really interesting. In our group, there were just 2 of us that were involved in Transition Berkeley, and so everybody else was coming into it without that background. And there were a few people that would just say, I found that people got really influenced by the conversations. Like, for example, one person talked about how they went to, how it was hard to shop at certain stores because of all the packaging. And like the next week, someone would come back and say, what you said about that, when I went to that store, I thought about that too. And another example was we were talking about how nice it would be to have less cars, less cars in the neighborhood, in the city in general, and how enjoyable it is to be on a bike or walk and be able to stop and talk to people and see, what's flowering. And so I ran into one of my neighbors on a weekend, and she said, that conversation really changed me. This weekend I thought about getting in my car to drive around, and I thought, I really don't need to do that. It's stressful, and I remember what everybody said at the last session. And so those are 2 examples of people in our group that I would say, for the most part, people are aware in Berkeley. We have a lot of resource here. But on a day-to-day basis, there's still a lot people aren't thinking about. And were definitely people in my group that not part of transition, and they just weren't even really thinking environmentally on a conscious level.
Wonderful. Thank you for responding to Ed's question. So it sounds like there are a lot of people that got involved, even in the pilot, which was a very early phase opt-in kind of thing that were really new to this. So that's good to know. Wanted to take the other two questions right now, and then we'll go into the next round. So Lori, let's hear from you and your question.
I'm from Transition Fidalgo and Friends in Anacortes, Washington, and I was just hoping that some of the participants could talk just briefly about what kind of time is involved for organizers if we're thinking about rolling out this locally here. Sort of what sort of time and effort commitments should we be prepared for as organizers?
Great question. Thank you. So any of you folks from the pilots, if you would like to respond, press 1 on your keypad so I know and can call on you. Chris Thompson from Bozeman, go ahead.
I would like to mention that the time that it takes to do this is really, really minimal because of all the work that Caroline and crew have done. It's really well developed and easy to implement in your community.
Wow, thank you. Great to hear. And Larry, you've got a comment as well. Go ahead.
One thing that we found very useful, since there's 7 chapters, we divided the facilitation to our members, and each member took a different chapter for each week. So we really delegated the responsibility, and there is some time involved, but if you delegate it where everyone takes a chapter, then it takes a lot less time. But to prepare for the meeting, I would say it takes a couple hours of time to maybe get some additional materials together, maybe do a little bit of research on what's available in your area. Somebody should facilitate the meeting, and you need a facilitator. It helps to maybe have a timekeeper if you want to stay on track, and a note taker. So there are some activities involved, but they're not much more than having any other kind of group meeting if you have a transition group or something like that. And I strongly recommend delegating responsibility so no one person gets loaded down with all the organizing. So that's my take on it.
Great, thank you for that. And also there is a facilitator's guide that we put together, and that's being updated as well. So that will help the people that are leading the meeting, giving them some suggestions, like Larry was saying, having a note taker and a timekeeper, and also some exercises and questions that the facilitator can ask. So there's some tips there, but that's great to hear from you folks that have done it in the pilot phase. And Claudia, you had a comment as well. Go ahead.
Yes, some of these have already been mentioned. One thing that I think is helpful is for the facilitator to read through that guide and do some, and if you're doing more than one group, to train the facilitators ahead of time. And often there are people who are already trained at facilitating, and that's a big help. I think it's also really important to have a note taker and a timekeeper for each meeting and rotate those. We found that doing it once a week, there was a lot to do for that 1 week, so we would recommend having the meetings once every 2 weeks so that there's plenty of time, especially for that energy meeting.
Great, thank you. And Linda, you had a brief comment as well?
Yeah, I have some people already said some of the things I was going to say, but one thing that seemed to work well for us was within each chapter, there are sections within each chapter. And so we got people that maybe had a passion for that particular piece of that chapter and could report back on it. And that seemed to do, for every session, then people were, automatically involved in it in that way. Even if they weren't facilitating the meeting, they were in charge of their section, giving a report back on it, and maybe adding their own input. And that really broke things up, and kept it from being just one person, doing most of the talking. Oh, and the other tip is somebody suggested a talking stick. And not that we had a lot of crosstalk, but it is tricky sometimes. People get passionate, and they, and some people like to talk a lot, and others maybe not as much. And everyone has a different skill level with facilitating. So maybe having a stone or some way of making sure that everyone is encouraged to have, a few minutes to talk.
Thank you. Our final question, then we're going to go into that next round. So Janice, Lynn, go ahead.
I'm just curious to know how you involve local government. We passed a climate action plan in my city. They need to implement it, and particularly with residents. So do you have any suggestions about how to work with local government through the Transition Streets initiative?
The pilot folks, just press 1 on your keypad if you. I mean, I did hear, Jamie, you said that you were going to city council meetings and county meetings and using public comment as one way to grease the wheels. Anything else more from you on that?
Yeah, I just started by just kind of going to the open before the meeting sessions. I've also been kind of networking with other groups like 350.org, and we have a climate action campaign person who actually was working for our mayor for 6 months, who drafted the city's climate action plan, and now she's formed a kind of a watchdog group. And the new mayor that came in, they were afraid was going to gut the plan. His budget didn't have anything in it for bicycles, for instance, although in the plan was to double the amount of miles people were going to use bicycles. So they did a press release about 8 or 9 days before his budget was due to give him time to do the right thing, and basically called him out on it in a public news conference, how here's what the climate action plan said, and here's the mayor's proposed budget that doesn't address anything. It was one specific item, just the bicycle portion of it. Within a week, all of a sudden, the budget was changed. So, even a little bit of, I wouldn't say shaming, but publicity, shining a light on the fact that they're not doing what they say they're doing, or, show me the money sort of thing. When the money's not in the budget, then you can just go and say, oh, look, it's obviously just lip service. They don't really care about doing anything real. But it would give them the opportunity to do the right thing without, putting them in a box. Don't corner them. And I'm being approached now by staffers from the city of San Diego, also the county of San Diego, saying, how can we help to implement this? One of the things that I'm looking at is starting a 501c3, because that way I can get them to pay for the books. If you don't have any kind of structure, it's really hard to go asking for money, and I can't fund this out of my own pocket. So I might be putting the cart before the horse since I don't have an initiative yet, but that's one way, is if you have some kind of nonprofit that they could make a donation to, and they say, look, I'll do your legwork for you. You can get on TV and say you have this great plan, but if there's no way to make it actually become a reality, this is something you can take credit for. This is something you can say, look, we gave money to this organization, and here's what they're doing, and thanks to Transition US, we've got all this data that they can also use to show here's where this money is going. I found that very helpful so far.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. And I know that there's a number of other parts of the pilots that had something to say about this. And what I'm thinking is, because this is now sort of bordering into sort of the next round, so I'm wondering if you others that put your hands up can fold this into this next round. So it's basically, this next round is sort of tips and suggestions on how others might start transition streets. And if you had a comment about how to engage government in that, feel free to bring that in as well. But let's do this next round before we run out of time here. So again, we'll start with you, Chris. So again, tips and suggestions on for the participants on this call, how they could start transition streets, and then also looping in Janice's question on how to engage government. So Chris, go ahead.
Well, I think if you live in a community that's not very receptive to these ideas, I think Jamie's idea is phenomenal to hold the politician's feet to the fire, so to speak, and maybe get some press out of that. I was fortunate enough to already have the groundwork laid for me, in that my community already was addressing a lot of these issues. They were very receptive to the ideas, and all it really took was an email to my city commissioners. I also reached out to, there was about 200 members on an email list that had been established by the founder of Transition Town Bozeman, Richard Weaver. And so I shot out an email to them and had more than enough people to facilitate the pilot program.
Great, thank you so much. And we'll be doing another little round of Q&A here at the end of this round as well. Claudia, go ahead.
Yes, I would recommend, if a neighborhood isn't feasible, to start in an organization or a church. And another way is to, if you have a time bank in your town, to look for interested people on the time bank, or in nextdoor.com, as has been mentioned. We are also showing Transition 2.0 and the video on our public access TV, and should get interested people from that. And then, as people have mentioned, often someone who's already taken this might be enthusiastic enough to start it in their neighborhood or in another group. And let's see, I also think that it's helpful to collect binders for a group, for those that don't have one. And another thing that I might mention is we found it really good for our group to come up with our own group agreements, which is a part of the opening chapter. But using what's in the workbook as a guide, but coming up with our own agreements was really bonding for us.
Thank you. Linda Curry, go ahead.
Well, my one of my motivators was that I really wanted to. I've done a lot of work on this kind of stuff, and I was on another program, and I really wanted to do this in my neighborhood and connect my neighborhood. So I actually went door to door. I had a letter, of my own, sort of an intro of what the program was, who I am, and I included some information from the transition streets that Carolyn and Maggie provided. And if people weren't home, I left it on their door with my phone number and address. And then I used Nextdoor as well to reach out just a little bit further. So that's the first part. Get a big pool. You're going to have dropout, and try to arrange a first meeting so that you can kind of explain what the program is. And get a lot more people than what you think. I think we had quite a few more people that initially were going to do it, and then we ended up with 11, which was really, I think, the perfect size. And then once you have a group of people, you've had your first meeting, well, this is what worked for us, then we started looking at dates and times that worked for people. And you can do that using something called Doodle, through a Doodle poll. That's really helpful. I think the every week schedule is tough, especially for people who work or people with families. We thought that maybe meeting twice a month or every other week would be a little bit easier. And the most important thing is make it fun. We always had refreshments. Sometimes people brought wine. And in the beginning it was a little stiff because we didn't know each other that well, and we ended with a really nice potluck, and it was just it was fun when we became friends. So as far as getting connected with your local government, we're kind of talking with our emergency preparedness coordinator in Berkeley about linking this to emergency preparedness, and that might be our next step. And we also we're lucky, we have a climate action plan, and we have a coalition developed already that has working groups. And I am starting to talk with the coalition about making Transition Streets one of the working groups to help implement the plan. So we're lucky in that way. But yeah, so those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Great. Those are all wonderful tips so far. Thank you. Jamie, go ahead with some of your other great tips.
Well, I just wanted to second the Doodle, Doodle.com for scheduling. We had that similar challenge. Everybody's so busy, and we ended up scheduling ours for every other week or so. Thank you to the previous speaker about the Climate Action Plan Working Group. I just realized I need to go to the mayor's office directly and sign up for that. I'm also going to be doing a more next door type thing, going door to door. I'm working on making a conversation pit in my front yard. I'm actually installing some benches in the parking strip because people in the neighborhood walk their dogs a lot around there. And I saw a neat thing on an Instructable site about a solar-powered USB charging station you could stick on a tree. And I'm going to extend my Wi-Fi network out to the sidewalk next to the food forest that I'm putting in the front yard that's fed with the gray water and the compost. So I'm hoping to kind of create a neighborhood conversation there. And it's a lot of great ideas on this talk.
Yeah, thank you. Boy, that's innovative. Great ideas. Larry, go ahead.
Okay, one of the things that we found useful was trying to find other groups that we could invite in. So, for example, those of you who live in California, in Sonoma County, there's a very influential group called Daily Acts. And we invited Daily Acts up to do a workshop. And while this was part of our transition group issue, we brought the Transition Streets people in as well. And we learned how to do community organizing from this group. And we learned how to put on workshops on gray water and on drought relief efforts. So I can see the Transition Streets as a good vehicle for inviting in outside groups to help do workshops, for example, to show an energy audit. I do energy auditing as part of my business, and we can go in and actually do a blower door test on a house and show you where you're losing heat and where you could save energy. And once you do a walkthrough in one of your neighbor's houses, you get a sense that this is something practical that you could use yourself, and everyone can do it. So this is a way to stimulate people to take action. And the thing that we're really promoting is that this is an action-oriented curriculum. It's not a matter of just sitting and talking, but it's a matter of doing. And what we want to do is get people to start helping each other with their gardens and start helping each other with water collection and things like that. So I see that as a good organizing thing. In addition, the topic came up earlier about how this interfaces with local government. And one of the things that we're doing, using the Daily Acts model, our transition movement is a nonprofit. We are organized under a nonprofit, and so we are trying to put together a program to go to our local governments and actually see if they will hire us to teach on drought relief topics, because a number of our local cities are really in bad shape on the drought, and we want to teach people how to tear up their lawn and put in drought-tolerant plants, how to build a gray water system, how to do rain catchment, and we have those skills in-house. So I can see the Transition Street model being a really great interface with local government to say, we've got solutions to local problems, help us get the word out. And I think this whole thing could take off under that umbrella. And finally, I keep coming back to it, but I still say we should integrate emergency preparedness into the whole thing, and that's another way to really catch the attention of the community and really get some respect, because so much of the Transition Streets work really is about self-reliance, and we want people to be as self-reliant as they can, and that ties in with emergency preparedness. So there's no reason that you should be without water or without food or without heat and shelter in an emergency. all of this program ties in with all of that. So we are writing our own chapter on emergency preparedness to be kind of an addendum to the Transition Streets program. So that's something we're working on. So those are some of my ideas.
Great. Thank you so much, Larry. And I know that some of us on this call have talked about sort of the advanced Transition Streets curriculum or advanced modules. And definitely emergency preparedness is a module we'd like to have in place. Maybe we can do that by the fall. So fingers crossed.
Well, that would be great, and we'd be happy to participate and help with that because I'm already working on it now.
That's what I was hoping you'd say. So that's the only way it's going to get done. So thank you.
You bet.
Elise, any
Yes.
tips or suggestions on how people can roll it out?
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest we had very little attrition in our group. I think we started with 8 and we ended with 9. So we didn't lose very many people. But one of the things that detracted us from bringing people into the group at the beginning was the first question that almost everybody was asking is, how much time do I need to dedicate to it? And we didn't have that answer for them. And so we lost a lot of people in the beginning. So my recommendation and what we would be doing when we go forward, sort of scaling this out, is to make sure that we give people an idea of at least how much time, it could take. Maybe they want to take more or less, but, is it about, one meeting, 2 hours every other week plus, maybe it's going to take you, 2 hours each week to apply, the kilowatt and the different things. So just to really, before you go in to recruit people, really have a sense of what kind of time commitment you're asking them for.
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to ask if there are any of the other pilot folks on the call that wanted to press one on their keypad and chime in with any comment about tips or suggestions for getting others involved. And Logan, go ahead.
I just wanted to comment on connecting with government. We're really lucky here in Charlottesville that our city council is doing an Energized Charlottesville, and they want us to partner with them. So that's giving us a number of opportunities to kind of get the word out about the program. Our concern was, we only have about 4 people from the pilot that are willing to kind of go out and start new groups. So we're thinking of having info sessions, information about Transition Streets, and then at the end of that session having like a 20-minute facilitator training for anybody who's really interested in starting it in their neighborhood. So we're going to see how that works. Another thing that made it really appealing for all of the households in our group was rotating houses. People seem to really enjoy seeing each other's houses, and it got everybody very involved and interested. And we did little house tours kind of spontaneously and showed people what we're doing, and that was kind of fun. Another thing that we're going to do this summer to get the word out, summertime is a very difficult time to get people together, but all of the neighborhoods in our town are having neighborhood picnics. So we're trying to connect to all the neighborhoods and go to their picnics and tell people about this program and do a little presentation if they want, or just have a table. Also, connecting with government. Another thing, our city council, they have a public comment period, like every time they have a meeting. So we're going to those. We're planning on presenting about Transition Streets at one of the public comment periods, just a short presentation because they only give you a couple minutes. And then the next time, we're going to go in and actually propose that the city state a proclamation in support of transition streets, which I think they will. We're not sure exactly on the procedure yet, but it's a good idea to check with your city government to see, you know, how you can get in there. The utility bill people have a newsletter, and we're going to be sending out something with that. The neighborhood coordinator for the city sends out monthly emails, I think, to the leaders of each of the neighborhood associations, and they've offered to send out materials with that. So all sorts of things.
Great. And please, you know, for all of you, as you're doing this, anything that you think could be shared with others starting transition streets, you know, let us know about that so we can get the word out to others. That's a lot of how all of the collateral has been built, isn't it? Just all the participation of people and their good ideas and pieces. So thank you so much. I wanted to now just see if we have any questions or comments before we wind up. We've got a few more minutes. And so just press 1 on your keypads. And presenters as well, feel free to press 1 on your keypad, and I can call on you too if you have a question for each other. Joni Freeman, go ahead.
Well, my question is has anybody experienced reaching out to communities of color, people in low income housing, that are not kind of the typical transition people that seem to be cultivating?
Larry, go ahead.
Well, as I mentioned, we are reaching out to our Native American communities. In our region, we have quite a few Native groups. We have 5 different tribes in our region, and they keep to themselves to a large extent, but we're trying to find some crossover where we have some commonality. They do have major unemployment and poverty issues. I mean, some of these areas are really like ghettos, and we are trying to reach out to them to discuss some of the concept of transition streets as a means of organizing community and helping to get people to be a little bit more self-reliant. And they've actually approached us and say, you know, we'd like to learn how to grow more of our own food and how to create soil, how to save energy, how to save water. I mean, a lot of these things are actually new to them. Some of our communities weren't cultivators. They harvested salmon and acorns from the forest and things like that, but they didn't do permaculture. They didn't know about how to build up soil. And so they've actually approached us to learn some of this, and that's why we're doing this intercultural skill share later this year, where we plan to exchange these skills. So that's our form of working on social justice issues and trying to create some community interface with low-income and minority communities in our region.
Thank you, Larry. Marissa, I think it's you who's got your hand up there.
Yes, I just wanted to chime in that we've gotten some tips and feedback on how to kind of reorient the curriculum to make it more accessible and more useful to low-income communities, particularly by including more of a justice lens on some of the issues that are discussed. For example, food deserts and fast food, and also prioritizing actions that improve, public health and environmental health and are really low cost or result in significant savings. It's going to take quite a bit of work, though, to do that, like, revision. So if anyone's really excited about working on that with me, that would be great. I'd love some help.
And that's Marissa Momartz, who works here at Transition US and has been a second edit on the curriculum. So yes, so help if there are ideas, and we envision a few iterations of, well, a lot of iterations of the curriculum over time. And wanted to see, Elise, I think you had a comment as well?
Comments. In terms of the overall in terms of the government connection, we are very lucky to have gotten the founder of Transition Town, Manitou Springs, Becky Elder, on our city council. So we now have one city council member who's the founder of Transition, another one who's a permaculturist, and the third who's a master gardener. So hopefully that will help. But I wanted to say that one of the people in the group had a great idea which we're going to be implementing. We have a small, so Manitou Springs is a town with a population of 5,000 that abuts Colorado Springs, which has about 500,000. We have a local newspaper here that everybody gets. And so what we're planning on doing is every week submitting a little article to the newspaper on, what Transition Town Manitou Springs is doing this week. Just asking, just to give us a little tiny, rectangle on that in that paper. So we're hoping to be able to recruit more people in that way. And then the other thing I wanted to say is what we realized in this newfound sense of community is that what we really need is a mobile app, a Transition Town mobile app, so that if someone's taking their pickup truck to go get some hay for their compost straw for their compost pile, that they can just quickly, from their phone, let everybody else in the group know that they're going to see if a couple more bales of straw need to be picked up. So that's my next project, Carolyn, is to do an app for Transition Town people to be able to communicate quickly.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
We are running out of time, and I wanted to just quickly hear the questions from people, and I think I'll try to hear a few at a time and then see what presenters can answer them in whatever way that we can finish up here. So Eric, you had your hand up. Did you have a question? Eric? I don't hear you. If you have a question, press 1 on your keypad again. And Tom Cockley, go ahead.
Yes, I heard the statement pilot program. What is a pilot program?
I could answer that. Well, we did a pilot program of Transition Streets before this launch that we're now beginning. So it wasn't public. We sort of threw the net out to our transition initiatives and those who had expressed interest in the concept of Transition Streets. And we had 12 different groups across the country pilot the curriculum in their town. So that phase is complete now. Now we have a curriculum that's been tried in these 12 communities, and that's some of the people we're hearing from today are those that led that. And then we'll be offering it to the public on our website starting next Friday. So hopefully that answered your question, Tom.
Yes, it certainly does. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And Robert, go ahead.
Yes, hi. I'm just curious what sorts of opportunities do people see the election in the United States next year as creating? That is, what opportunities are possible or should be pursued because of the election? I'm sorry, I have Parkinson's disease. I can't speak very well.
Yeah, so it's what sort of opportunities around the election is, so that's a question again. I'm going to let people, the presenters, answer questions as in a moment. I think I'm going to get the last couple here, and then we'll hear some responses. So presenters, get ready. And Danielle, is it?
Yes. My question is, are any of your 12 participating transitioners partnering with Habitat for Humanity?
Okay, let's see if anyone is. And the last question we'll be taking today, I think there's two more. So Lori, go ahead.
I had just one quick comment and then a question, and that is in relation to the question of how to reach out to sort of lower income communities. One idea would be to make the curriculum available in Spanish. I know that would reach a lot of communities here in Washington and certainly in California as well. And then I heard somebody mention early on about the low carbon diet program, and that's a program that that our group has run in our community. And I'm wondering about sort of what kind of overlap there is, and if having recently run the low carbon diet program, if it's still valuable to do transition streets, sort of what the differences and similarities are.
Great. So those are questions and about the election and about low carbon diet. And then Joni, go ahead.
I have a meeting with the CEO of Habitat for Humanity on Monday the 18th, and it will be a question that I will ask, so I could filter that back to you all.
Great. Thank you so much. And then Jamie, you have your hand up to respond to something that was asked.
Yes, thanks. A couple of them regarding the reaching out to people of color. That was one of the articles in the newsletter that actually piqued my interest, because as a white guy, it's very challenging to have a group that doesn't look a lot like you. Previously, I had gone to my local food bank, the director of which I knew through the fire service previously, and was going to teach classes on little hydroponic garden boxes that people could grow their own greens and things in a very small amount of space. And it just occurred to me that I need to go back to him with the transition concept, because they serve largely people of color. And if you have a 501c3, you can go to Home Depot or a hardware store and they will donate materials to you if you put down the project, what it's for. And I could get materials for something like that to be able to tackle the food portion. That also opens the conversation about the larger Transition Streets project. And I love the idea of putting the book in different languages. We have a lot of different ethnic neighborhoods in San Diego. One of the other reasons for funding would be actually to pay translators to translate those. You know, we have a large Southeast Asian community, obviously a large Hispanic community. So that was something I wanted to throw out there. I have done work with Habitat for Humanity on a housing project down in Tecate across the border in Mexico, and they built a series of homes around an artificial wetland that they used to treat all of their gray water using plants and the natural ecosystem. I'm taking a page out of that to put one in my own yard using gray water and rainwater as a demonstration project. But thanks for the tip for Habitat. I want to reach out to them as well.
Great. And Linda, I wondered if you wanted to respond to the low carbon diet question and doing transition streets and what the differences or overlaps, or any comments on that?
Yeah, they're both great programs. I feel like the Transition Streets, it allows for a little bit more open. It allows for more dialogue to happen. The other program is a little easier to do with people that don't live close together. There's less of an expectation on relying on each other. And with Transition Streets the focus is really to connect people who live close together. So those are two differences. They're both very different, and they're both really valuable. I'm tending to lean now towards the transition street, the way that that's set up, just because I feel like dialogue is probably the most effective way, and conversation it's the most effective way to get people to hear each other and to make change.
Thank you. Any comment? Does anyone have a comment about sort of the election question and how transition streets might factor into the next election, or anything on that? Oh, Robert, I'm sorry, but I don't think. Oh, Chris, maybe you have a comment there?
Yeah, I would just stress the importance of reaching out to your city, county, and state legislators, representatives, and whatnot, and just expressing your thoughts. I mean, it's as simple as shooting. You can shoot everyone an email all at once and have an impact that way.
Great. And Linda, you have a comment as well?
Yeah, in terms of, big issues that are happening, on the political landscape, it's really helpful, again, just to talk with people locally about it. And none of us has time we don't have enough hours in the day to research every aspect and to, go beyond some of the, surface media information to really get, a good understanding of some of the issues and the politicians and things like that. So talking locally with your neighbors and people in your community, I think is a great thing to do around all issues, local and bigger.
And we are out of time. We're actually over time. So I really want to thank all of you wonderful pilot leaders who took the first pass at Transition Streets and have such positive things to report and helpful things for others who are interested in doing this. And again, I just wanted to mention that the website, new website, transitionstreets.org, will be up and running next Friday along with the curriculum, the updated V2 curriculum. We imagine there'll be V3s and 4s, etc. But we'll have V2, and it'll be easy to access. A lot of the guides, facilitator guides, and other collateral that you need to launch successfully in your neighborhoods will be there. And we'll be here at transitionus.org to lend a hand as we can as well. And there's a great and growing resource base of people that have done it now. So there's a lot there, a lot of wealth of information. And just really, again, thank everyone for being with us today. And thank you, wonderful leaders who stepped forward to do this. And just want to